great thing about using real-time data and real-time bidding and real-time buying, which is enabled through the advent of ad exchanges. You know, Google's own double-click ad exchange has grown 4x in the last year, is the fact that now advertisers and agencies can make decisions with as much information as possible about what audience they want to get in front of, how much should they pay for that audience, when their ad should run, what type of creative should run for that audience. And previously, if you contrast this with the way it used to work, you would negotiate a deal 6 months, a year in advance, 9 months in advance. You wouldn't even know how well your new product was going to be doing in the market. You wouldn't know whether you would have to spend a lot of money to sell it or a little amount of money. You were essentially making a lot of decisions with really imperfect information. And real-time buying really eliminates all of that. You get in front of exactly the right audience on exactly the right publishers for exactly the right price you're looking for. Similarly, it benefits our publisher partners dramatically too, because now, if there's a big news event and there was a spike in traffic, in the old world, they would have lost out all that incremental media opportunity that would have come from a spike in traffic because they sold it 6 months ago when they didn't know about the spike. In a real-time buying world, that's no longer the case. The auction will still run, and you will run ads on that inventory where previously you would have had nothing running. So just those are just two really simple examples of kind of contrasting the way it would work in a real-time buying environment as it exists today versus the way it used to work. And what's exciting is that this technology really has really taken off, frankly, only in the last year. That's kind of what I was referring to. A year ago, 0% of impressions on our ad exchange were real-time bought. Today that number is 67%, and it's growing extremely rapidly, so that's very exciting. We've all seen the industry slide with the hundreds and hundreds of companies. A dollar starting on the left-hand side of that picture, by the time it ends up with a publisher on the right-hand side of that picture, has been picked away from dramatically by, many of these companies that you talked, many of which are actually adding great value, but taking their pound of flesh. Lots of friction. I describe, the 28 cents on every dollar just get eaten up and back and forth. And consequently, a relatively smaller portion of that dollar is ending up in the publisher's pocket. Our vision, by creating sort of this end-to-end platform for buying and selling display advertising, is to make it so that more of those dollars fall into a publisher's pocket through technology like real-time bidding, through technology like dynamic creative, which drives up performance and attracts more brand dollars, but fundamentally by giving publishers a single platform to manage all of their inventory: mobile, video, desktop, directly sold, indirectly sold, all in one place, so that they can make decisions on a global level as opposed to looking at every single channel and format in a silo. And just by doing that, the performance improvements can be dramatic. To give you a concrete example, we found when we did a study that publishers that use our ad exchange platform, back to this sort of buying and selling platform, if you will, see on average 188% increase in revenue compared to the way that they used to monetize that inventory, which was monetizing it in a silo, a direct sales silo, indirect channel silo. And if we can continue to give 3x improvement in revenue to our publisher partners, then I think it bodes really well for what this technology can do for digital publishers going forward, because I think it's still it's really early days.
Yeah, so it seems like your group, obviously dealing with publishers all day long and agencies and media buying companies. What are some common themes, both frustrations and excitement, that you're hearing on both sides of the table?
One of the most recent things that I hear a lot about is, I think there's a general note of optimism in the industry. Digital just became the second largest marketing channel, second only to TV, kind of globally, which is fantastic. And within digital, display specifically is the fastest growing channel. 25% year-on-year growth, I think, lends itself to a lot of optimism for the industry. But I think, at least from a Google perspective, what I try to continue to remind my teams of is the long-term vision. It's not just about that 25% year-on-year growth, but how do we actually deliver on that promise of getting the industry from 25 billion to the $200 billion promise that I know that the industry can achieve if we continue down the path that, of adopting this technology platform that I've talked about. Aspects of conversational marketing, social media in general, I don't think that those are things that are exclusive from display. I think display advertising is a broad term that in my mind encompasses all formats: graphical, video, mobile advertising, all capabilities within those formats. Social media capabilities, interactivity, other ways of engaging users. We shouldn't be thinking about marketing in all of those silos. What we should be thinking about is what is our overall sort of fundamental campaign objective, and then how can we deploy those into our display campaigns in a way that works for whatever that advertiser's objectives are. So I don't view any of this as an either or. I view it as all part of this display ecosystem that we're all working on creating. We don't do anything as it relates to our search data for retargeting, remarketing purposes today. That's certainly, I can see how that could be an area of opportunity for the industry. We don't do anything like that there today. What I would say in general, though, is that we're in the really early days of data-driven buying in general. The upside from things like remarketing are tremendous. Interests, demographics, other types of characteristics about the user that we can use to make the advertising much more effective and relevant to that user are important. The one thing that I would just say there that I think is important for the entire industry to remain focused on is really what is in the best interest of the user, not just in terms of relevant messaging, but how do we actually give more control to that user, not just in terms of being able to opt out of certain types of advertising, but more interestingly, how do we actually allow them to craft the types of messages that they would like to see around what their particular interests are. So that's an area I think that's ripe for innovation.